It is a quiet evening at a Bayside mansion. An old lady in a wheelchair is tooling around, going from room to room for no particular reason. Her peaceful evening is rudely disrupted. This old dude over here is trying to stage the scene as, oh geez, this is YouTube. How shall I put this? A self-induced opposite of birth. Then all of a sudden, this just might be the quickest revenge response in cinematic history. Hey everybody, it's your boy Ralph. Back again at the Ralph Castle. For reasons unknown. Today I'm gonna talk about one of the nuttiest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Spanning decades as a wandering, reanimated skeleton, cursed to linger on this mortal plane well into my 50s. This movie is one of them Italian giallo pictures from 1971. It was directed by the Mario brothers. Oh, I don't think I read that right, sorry. Mario Bava. Sorry about that. The name of the movie is Ecologia del Delitto. Now, it's had a lot of different names, but the one that most people remember it by is A Bay of Blood. And trust me, there's a lot of blood in that bay. Absolute metric tons of it. So, what are my overall thoughts on this one? Personally, I thought it was maybe the silliest thing I'd ever seen. I definitely enjoyed it, though. Either way, I'm gonna spoil it from start to finish. Because I'm lazy like that. So please, join me, if you will, for a vigorous skinny dip into this bloody-ass bay. Let's go back to the beginning for a second. The staging, as it were. Now, even the most moronic Italian cop is probably not going to believe that an old lady in a wheelchair is going to rig up this particular setting. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But immediately after this scene, we cut to a cuddly couple in a bizarrely decorated swingers hut. Now, back in the 70s, guys like this were a dime a dozen. A fun fact, I don't know if you noticed my new portrait on this channel, but I based it on this old 70s album cover. This guy, Tom Jones, he was kind of like the patron saint of guys like this. Now, the guy in the movie, his name is Ventura, which is the same name of an old Pontiac. And what would a middle-aged swinger be without a nearby sex kitten? Yeah, I'm just gonna call her Kitten, make my life a little easier. Well, this Ventura guy, he's a real estate developer with interests in the bay in question. And he's gotta rush back to the bay to handle business, now that the Countess, who I guess owned the bay, well, she's no longer among the living. And Kitten over here doesn't want him to leave. You know, she wants his hairy chest and goofy necklace all to herself. And can you blame her, ladies? Meanwhile, back at the bay, we meet a couple of new weirdos. I'm gonna have to start keeping track. There's a lot of people in this movie. We got Simon the Sweater King and Bug Boy, because, you know, he's interested in insects and is always poking at them. And honestly, they both really are a couple of weirdos, right? And whenever you see a weirdo in one of these horror movies, you know, you're instantly suspicious, right? But we got two weirdos here, and in fact, there's a third weirdo watching them from a nearby bluff. That's what these movies are. They open with a murder, and then instantly set up a bunch of weirdos to act as potential suspects. So, you know, nothing unusual so far. But then, suddenly, at the 15-minute mark, the movie takes a sudden detour. A group of carefree young people enter the movie in a sassy little buggy. Look at them, not a care in the world. Now this group has one thing on their mind. Trespassing. Now I don't remember their names, so I'm going with Helmet Head, Commander Hansy, Baguette, and Brunhilde. Actually, that is her real name in the movie. I mean, how can you forget a name like Brunhilde? So the first place that they trespass is an abandoned gas station. You know, we've seen this setting before, right? And down the path a bit is an abandoned nightclub, I guess, on this weird little bay. And then shortly after going to the abandoned nightclub, 3 of them decide to upgrade from trespassing to full-on breaking and entering. You know, which is a felony in most parts of the world. And hey, look, it turns out it's Ventura's place. Now, Brunhilde decides she doesn't want any part of this, so she decides she's gonna take one of them little skinny dips into the titular bay. And as you might imagine, this scene is particularly drawn out. Sadly, her peaceful little swim is interrupted. She flees in terror. Ah! Dang it. Probably my favorite character in this bizarre little movie. She was a true free spirit. Let's all take a moment of silence for our girl Brunhilde over here. Meanwhile, these 3 felons are making themselves right at home in Ventura's Bayside Love Palace. But let's not get too attached, shall we? Because all 3 of them will be exiting this movie within a couple of minutes. First to go is Helmet Head, followed by Baguette and Commander Hansy in a 2-for-1 special. Alright, time for a little sidebar conversation over here. Now, if you ever read about Bay of Blood, you might have seen it referred to as a proto-slasher. Because it's a really old movie that seems to have introduced a lot of the tropes you find in slasher movies ever since. In fact, the original Friday the 13th actually copies some of the scenes outright. In reality, all of this stuff takes place in a 20-minute mini-movie within the larger work. Seriously, these 4 characters are introduced, stalked, and then brutally dispatched within about 20 minutes. You know, you look down and you realize there's still an hour left. In fact, we still got new people to meet. This horrific couple, for example. Now, I'm gonna call them Janie and Mr. Janie. Turns out Janie was the daughter of the old guy from the beginning. And she's looking for answers about his disappearance. You know, not because she's some kind of loving daughter, but because she wants the inheritance all to herself. So what they're doing is they're going around pestering the locals. And they start with Bug Boy and Mrs. Bug Boy. You know, giving them a hard time. But they're quickly directed to Simon the Sweater King. Now it turns out that Simon was the Countess's illegitimate son. Ugh, this is getting a bit exhausting. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit. You know, they go to see Simon and instantly stumble upon the old man's body in his little boat. And of course, instead of calling the cops, they go up to Ventura's little bungalow. And Janie finds all them young folks piled into a bathtub. But uh-oh. Ooh, right in the vastus lateralis. That's gonna hurt for a while, I bet. And then Bug Boy wanders in on Ventura's body. So Janie sends Mr. Janie to go kill him, and he does. But then Mrs. Bug Boy also comes in and sees Ventura, and Janie kills her. I think I may have underestimated Mr. and Mrs. Janie vis-a-vis their homicidal tendencies. But it appears like they have things mostly wrapped up. Except look who shows up. It's Kitten from the beginning. Kitten finds Ventura, you know, totally not dead, because why would he be? And he sends it to Simon to go get help. Which is a bad idea. Why? Well, the movie is kind enough to tell us in a series of flashbacks that Simon is the one who killed the old man in revenge, and then killed all of them carefree young people because they found the body. And it also turns out that Simon knew that Ventura set up the old man to stage the Countess' death. And he also knew that Kitten was in on it. How? It doesn't matter. So Simon adds Kitten to his kill chart. You know, you see what I mean? This movie is so out of control. It really is. And we're not even done. Alright, so let's see who's still alive from our chat over here. Mr. and Mrs. Janie, yeah, they're still going. And Simon and Ventura, though he's hurting. But it kind of doesn't even matter, because within a few minutes, Mr. Janey manages to take out both Simon and Ventura. Completely exhausting. But it does look like Mr. and Mrs. Janey won the battle in the end. The battle for the inheritance. Which is crazy to think about. Because back in the early 70s, there weren't cameras everywhere. There weren't GPS to track your movements. And there really wasn't any forensics as a science. So all you had to do was drive home before the cops got there, and you got away with it, So the two of them drive back to their little trailer, where their adorable children await them to give them lots of hugs and kisses. What just happened? It turns out their little kids were secret agents of ultimate justice. And they go prancing off to the bay to enjoy themselves. I suppose as the ultimate inheritors of the bay. Credit to the movie, that is one heck of an ending. Did I say this thing was off the chain? Well, it is. It was. Whatever. And what a ride. I have no idea what was in the drinking water back in Italy in the 70s and 80s. The movies they made at the time were all so campy and strange, yet deadly serious. But if you like that sort of stuff like I do, then you'll have a great time. I'm giving this thing 3.5 stars out of 5. Okay then, another one in the can. I decided to make this video instead of, getting a head start on my taxes. I'm no stranger to making dumb choices too. Anyhow, wish you guys all nothing but the best. Take care, everybody. Bye.